Horror movies often have trouble sticking the landing. They're so focused on eliciting raw, visceral reactions from the audience that sometimes it's easy to get some wires crossed, story-wise. In order to move the plot forward while sticking with the same commitment to atmosphere and scares, concessions have to be made. Obvious solutions are ignored or never noticed by the main cast of characters, which often means that a few more people are going to suffer before the 95 minutes are up. In most cases, this isn't really a bad thing. If the movie's good enough, despite these plot holes and logical failures, suspension of disbelief or pure enjoyment will kick in, and the whole thing doesn't have to crumble under the weight of its own poor decision. However, there are some cases where nothing can save a movie from its oon ending. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be counting down the top 5 scary horror movies that got ruined by their own ending. I'll do my best to end on a strong note for this one. Before we get started, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more botched resolutions. I shouldn't have to say this, but I will just in case. We're talking about the endings of all of the movies mentioned, so spoilers are inbound. Outstanding, let's begin. Crawling in at number 5, we've got The Village. I'll start with the divisive one, just to keep things interesting. For years, people have thought of The Village as a classic Shyamalan twist gone too far. An experiment in misdirection gone terribly wrong. We can only imagine what people were thinking in theaters when this first came out. The reveal seems so odd, so tonally inconsistent. After a creepy and meditative opener so heavily leaning on period piece elements, the bomb is dropped. Everything is happening in modern times. They're in a private nature reserve oasis. Everyone's grieving. There are no monsters. This opens the floodgates for all sorts of questions. What would these so-called monsters do if someone was caught leaving? Would they kill them to keep the truth secret? How does that work with their whole peaceful recluse thing? How do the folks inside the village convince the entire world to leave them alone forever? Who has that kind of money? How did multiple successive governments agree to keep this facade up? Why was this one person allowed to go out and get medicine? What about literally anyone else who got sick in the past? Did they just die? Why is our lover boy so special? There are just so many glaring flaws that open up as soon as this tidbit is revealed, leaving a lot of people feeling cheated and or incredulous. All of the tension dissipates upon the reveal as well. Now, upon further inspection, the movie might not be as bad as we've made it out to be over the past couple decades. A lot of the Village defenders are coming out of the woodwork these days to praise its tone, atmosphere, and themes incorporating the Iraq War. All valid points, but the twist ending transforms the movie into a sad, strange drama when it was billed as a horror thriller. Maybe if it wasn't advertised as such, people might take it a little more seriously. And maybe if M. Night didn't have his own cameo where he personally reveals the twist, that might have helped. At least the twist wasn't that aliens who are weak to water invading the planet Earth. That would just be silly. Drifting in at number 4, we've got Paranormal Activity, just at large. The first Paranormal Activity was pretty scary, yeah? It was a fresh idea executed well on a tiny budget. However, the focus on atmosphere and scares definitely outweighed the story, which left a lot to be desired. This became very apparent when the credits rolled. It caught me off guard when I first saw this demon-filled flick. Rapid fire jump scares, then title cards, then nothing. Can the ending of Paranormal Activity even be considered an ending? It's just a wide open scenario. Micah dies and then Katie vanishes. The world is her oyster. But we don't see any of this happen, and the final sequence is just a bunch of scuffling and spooky images. It sort of makes sense considering the fact that there was no real script. Director Oren Peli says that they gave the actors situations and told them to improvise most of the movie using a process known as retroscripting. The whole thing was put together in basically a week, which is impressive and a little bit mind-boggling. During this time, they came up with multiple endings, many of which didn't end up being filmed at all, so okay, the weak ending was a product of the movie being largely improvised. It's actually pretty incredible that it came together at all. But my beef doesn't end here though. No sir. After the success of their first flick, Paramount decided to do a half dozen more, and each one gets another non-ending. More people mysteriously disappearing, all reported on title cards after the final chaotic sequence. They found a formula and they ran with it, milking the cash cow as they went. There are always a couple good scares in Paranormal Activity flicks, but they seem to get lazier and more far-fetched over time. Gimmicks came in to replace bits of plot, and stories became even more incoherent. And every ending just seemed to be a segue into another sequel. Instead of making cohesive, semi-self-contained movies, they made what almost seems like episodic entries in an ever-ongoing television series. No closure, no retribution, just people dying and then disappearing so the possession can be passed on to the next unlucky contestant. Coming in at number 3, Invaders from Mars. A decade after directing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper had quite the filmography under his belt. Eaten Alive, the Salem's Lot miniseries, Poltergeist, Life Force, the list goes on. So what he was thinking with Invaders from Mars, we may never know. A remake of the 1953 film of the same name, this extraterrestrial flick is a cheesy, miscast mess. Don't get me wrong, I love cheesy, miscast messes, but this one in particular touches upon one of the most childish and overused tropes in all of creative writing. After the entire movie plays out with countless townsfolk assimilated into the aliens, with US Marines being enlisted by a schoolchild and his nurse pal, with fiendish, slimy special effects being used for middling results, it turns out it was all just a dream. And that's the kind of ending a 4th grader slaps on the end of his free writing assignment for an easy B+. Then, after David falls back asleep, it's implied that the aliens are back again. But he was also just sleeping, leading me to think that he was dreaming once again. And then the same events will play out for a second time. Great. A silly, half-baked flick from the legendary Mr. Hooper, but it shows us that it's fine to slip up every once in a while, which is nice. Coming in at number 2, we've got The Descent, American ending. I've talked about The Descent before. It is a great, tense, claustrophobic horror film. It touches on themes of friendship, adultery, loss, grief, and madness. It's well acted, well shot, and well edited. Honestly, it's hard to find many faults in the movie at all. I know some folks aren't big fans of the crawlers showing up halfway, but the tonal shift is well worth the implications it introduces. Is Sarah, overwhelmed with grief and terror, hallucinating these monsters? Does anyone else fully understand what's going on, or are they too invested in their fight for survival to eke anything out? To top it all off, the original cut of the flick had a bleak, dark, and depressing ending. Just how I like it. The finale topped off the movie perfectly with little bits of revenge, relief, regret, and then the realization that doom was not in fact avoided. However, this ending was deemed too hopeless for American audiences, so about a minute of footage was trimmed off the back end. Where the original ending features a sort of dream sequence where Sarah is knocked unconscious, escapes, sees the ghost of Juno, and then wakes up with a crowd of crawlers closing in, the American ending just has her escape. Sure, she sees the ghost of Juno in her car, but it's also implied that she gets away just fine. Well, as fine as one can be after going through an ordeal like that. But it also gets rid of the emotional vision of Sarah's daughter's birthday cake along with little Jessica herself. Snipping the moment in which Sarah resigns herself to fate dampens the blow a little, making for a much less impactful ending. Come on, America, we've had enough of shameless positivity. Let's be honest with ourselves and look death in the eye. And finally at number 1, The Devil Inside. Oh man, this one was bad enough to elicit boos from the general movie-going public. You might get a boo or two at a film festival from time to time, but in a public theater on opening weekend, yikes. The ending of The Devil Inside is lazy, like lazy. And even so, it cleaned up at the box office on opening weekend. It did see substantial drops afterwards though, reflective of the reviews it was getting. This found footage flick is decent. Nothing special, just a little rough around the edges, and it still has some merits. We follow Isabella, a documentary filmmaker who visits her triple homicidal mother at the asylum where she's being held. It becomes increasingly apparent that this woman is possessed and that the demons are possibly transferable. In the last act, we know for sure that the mother had 4 demons possessing her and that they've more than likely been passed on to Isabella and her colleagues. This leads to some general messiness, including a self-inflicted gunshot wound and the assault of some nurses. The surviving human duo escapes in a car with a possessed Isabella in tow, and they're driving to have her exorcised. All of a sudden, Michael whips the whip into oncoming traffic, sending the vehicle careening and flipping off the road. The 2 men are dead, and Isabella is missing. And guess what happens next? That's the end. A title card pops up letting the audience know that the investigation is still ongoing, with Isabella's case remaining unresolved. It also provides a link to a website, prompting viewers to keep up with new developments. Boo. Just as an interesting element is introduced, they cut it off. This is something you do to hype up a horror movie ahead of release, not leave your audience wanting more through a premature ending. Oh, and the website was largely useless. No clues, no additional information, just marketing stuff. It doesn't even exist anymore, and following the link will bring you to a domain registration page. Great. I'm kidding! Sort of. What'd you think of the list? What's the worst horror movie ending that you can think of? Did you see any of these while they were still in theaters? What was that like? I want to know. Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more disheartening ones from the top 5 SCP monsters that can never escape, part 14. Nebulous Cat says, scariest SCP on this list, Raid Shadow Legends. I mean, I'm glad you can get that out of your system, but now look at how many likes your comment got when I screen grabbed it. Nice. Takamiya Shin says, that swamp lady looks like good wife material. Care to join me meeting her, Keegan? Are you asking me to be the donkey to your Shrek? Because if so, absolutely! I can't wait to seduce a dragon. Catboy999 says, hi, and how are you doing? Hope you're having a great day. Hello, and I'm doing quite well. I could be a little more caffeinated, but I'll make do. Hope you're having a great day too. Lancelot's Word says, if you could be your own SCP monster, what would you be? Just wondering. Probably 507. It would just be a blast shifting in and out of random dimensions. Terrifying, sure. Inconvenient, definitely, but totally worth it. And Rosy Cheeks says, quack. Hey, I resent that. I may be a snake oil salesman and an unlicensed medical practitioner, but I am no quack. That's all the time we have for today. Before I sell both my kidneys and most of my liver, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more maniacal movies. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Yada-da, yada-da, waiting for this stuff that I wrote that I'm not gonna say. Yada-da, yada-da, put it on a title card in the video. Do-do-do-do-do. Ya bum 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 ba ya da da ya da da dilly da dilly da dilly 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 da.